All right. So
It told me you're recording.
I did it. All right, cool. All right. So we're gonna start this little podcast slash the conversation about major issues in detection. Chris, you want to start out by telling them a little bit who you are, like your background?
Yeah, Chris Coulahan, um, currently active duty in the Navy, kennel master type. Been in 12 years. Been working with dogs all 12 of those years. My first tour was out in Guam. Kind of just the hustle and bustle, just learning what the Navy does with dogs, learning about the Navy, learning about being a master at arms, which is equivalent to, most people know it as an MP, right? What else? Oh, went through an IA out there, went down to Lackland Air Force Base, spent about 3.5 years down at Lackland Air Force Base training dogs and training students. That's kind of where my mind got opened up there and where I actually really got interested in dogs. I don't know how interested I really was in dogs prior to that. I've always had a love for dogs, but really like the training of them kind of came when I went down to Lackland Air Force Base. I started studying other trainers that weren't just military, and it just took off. Started meeting some of them, started going to seminars, started going to courses. The Navy paid for a couple of those. The rest of them were just out of pocket, and been in the mix ever since. I ran my first kennel in North Texas after that tour. A small kennel, only 4 dogs there. And now I'm out in Italy, run a bigger kennel out here. And
They said that was
don't
top
know where
notch
I'm
up there.
What'd you say?
They said that was top notch up there,
Where?
out in North Texas.
Yeah, North Texas. That was a hot spot, baby. We had a lot of fun up there. I think also there's just so many talented trainers in the Texas area. There's so many different agencies to train with. If you like sport training too, there's basically all the different sports are in that same area. You might have to go to Central or Southern Texas, but regardless, if you want to do PSA, any other ring sports and stuff like that, I apologize. My allergies are kicking my ass right now. But yeah, a little bit of background on myself. I've done some pet training over the past 5 to 6 years as well. Learned a lot from that too. That's still a field where I feel very amateur in. But yeah, just trying to give back to the community. I want good things for the military working dog community. I have a close connection with it. I still deal with having conversations and dialogue back and forth all the time from the most senior handler, program manager, to the most junior person that just finished canine school, or maybe they haven't even gotten to canine school yet. Try to stay really active in it, but I also like to live a balanced life. I can't spend as much time as I'd like to talking to the handlers, but this is a better way to get out to them. I'm not super fluent with doing podcasts and Zooms and stuff, but we're trying to get better. And yeah.
All we're trying to do is try to have a conversation about any major issues we've been seeing, mostly for the military working dog community, but kind of goes out to any spectrum if you like so. But Chris, so what do you feel like are major issues in detection as soon as the dogs gets to your kennel, or what you see at the kennels so far in your career?
Probably, I'm trying to think.
It's a lot, y'all.
Yeah, there's a lot, and we create most of them. I think one of it is probably conditioning. The dogs, we run them for a long period of time in detection, and it kind of depends on the time of the year that they were originally trained. But there's always a lack of conditioning going on there. I think because it's not mandatory to exercise dogs per se, other than walking them to their kennels and throwing them in the trailer and moving to different sites. Putting some type of stringency or criteria on physical conditioning with the dog would do wonders. And even if it's running them on a slat mill or a dog pacer or something like that, that would make a huge difference. I'm trying to, some of the other ones that I probably see is people that receive the dogs have a totally different expectation than how the dog was completed coming out of Lackland Air Force Base. I don't think it's any fault of either of them. It's just through a lack of education. But even handlers in my own shop that I've spent a lot of time with trying to teach them extra stuff and helping them understand. For instance, it might not necessarily be detection, but thinking that the dog comes with what the minimum of that service standard requires. So if it's, for instance, 3 minute down, that has been tested prior to. It's not the case, right?
No.
So same thing in detection. We have additional odors that aren't trained down at Lackland Air Force Base, but people throw it right into the fire and have the expectation that the dog already has some conditioning done with that specific odor. And there's a lot of steps that are skipped. I think there's just not a clear picture in between the receiving of the dog and when the dog's finished.
So if you're talking about that, what do you feel like is what should handlers or the trainer should be reinforcing to promote those behaviors or like strengthen the behaviors that you want? Whether you have a new odor that they haven't been introduced to, or you want to make a stronger dog working towards source of odor and not just fringing or whatever it may be. What can you do to help with that?
I hate to keep going back down to Lackland, but the more people that understand that process, the better this entire process goes. I know Lackland right now is working on a website where they're showing, they have a framework and it shows dogs in the very beginning all the way to the very end. And it shows problems that are going on with the dog, but it's going to show the entire DOD. I'm not super fluent with what they're putting out, but I did get to see a little bit of the background of it and help with some of it. But I think if they can see that process and to include a certification down there or qualification, whatever you want to call it, that's going to help big time, because you can't expect someone that's been out in the field to try to introduce new odors to the dog. They did not learn that process. You're really throwing them to the fire, and you're going to cause problems because they have no idea how to do that process. Even if it's just introducing another odor, they still don't know how to do that. No one's teaching them that either. Mm-hmm. So even if they say, okay, I know this dog wasn't trained on, let's see here, time fuse or something. This dog wasn't trained on black powder. The first thing they're going to do is go plant the odor out there in the problem and just hope that the dog goes all the way to the indication, the final indication on it. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't, they're probably going to hover in the area long enough to where the dog starts to notice something odd's going on. And if the dog has had any cues put into it prior to, the dog's going to sit and the dog's going to get paid on a false response.
We call that barbecue city.
Say that again?
Barbecue city. It's just cueing a dog.
Yeah. And how much those dogs prior to have experience with body cues and body language and leash pressure and so on and so forth, I don't know, because you're just trying to get dogs out. So I don't know anymore. It's been a long time too, but there's just not the information there. So if they can see how they did it from the very beginning, you would continue that entire process. It might not be the process you believe in, but if the dog's already been trained that way, I don't like to change things too much unless it's a very talented trainer that already completely knows what they're doing. I would just continue on with the same process.
So if we're talking about that, introducing it, would you say does sit time matter? Does, walking the dog through the area? Like, would you pay on a change of behavior or a sniff or tell the dog sit immediately? Like, what behavior would you look for? Would you pay just for sniffing behavior? Would you even put the dog on cue to search? What are we looking at?
So in the very beginning, generally, I like to just see how comfortable the dog is in the areas. I'm not going and placing odor anywhere. If that's what we're talking about, just kind of the initial steps to receiving a dog.
Or just like to do that new odor.
Okay. So yeah, first off, I want to make sure the dog's comfortable in the area. I might at some point introduce the toy and see if the dog will take the toy with energy, because if the dog's not very comfortable, I'll get to see that in the way that he holds the toy. And if he's checking out and coming off the toy early, if he seems to want to engage with me, how aware of the environment he is. And then I'll probably, outside of that environment, start with the box process, just because I know that's mostly what they use. And I'm going to do the exact same process where I have that odor in the box. And then I just work on that single box. And then I start to add a second box to see if the dog will discriminate. And one thing to keep in mind too, in these earlier stages of things, you don't need to add any type of corrections. If the dog goes to the box that doesn't have the odor in it, you're not going to be, I could go way more advanced into this, but generally speaking, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll change the order of the boxes, and I'll add 3 boxes. And I want to see, okay, this dog discriminates pretty well on this specific odor. At some point, I'm going to have those boxes in a normal problem. I'm going to have, let's just say, that time fuse planted in a drawer. It's going to be very, very, very easy. The drawer's probably going to be cracked. It's going to have been sitting there for a while. But I'm still going to do the box discrimination process in the very beginning of that problem to make sure that dog's still tracking what we're doing. Once he's doing very well on that, let's just say I've spent a couple days with it, I like to take my time. Then I'll take him straight from that box, straight into the problem. He'll search a little bit, and then I'm probably going to pay on a change of behavior. I hope I have a change of behavior. If I don't have one, I don't force it. I'll just keep searching and say, maybe I didn't place that right, or maybe there's some disconnect going on. I have to kind of go back to the drawing board.
You'll lower your criteria.
I always lower my criteria. My criteria is already being lowered because I would just be paying on a change of behavior. I wouldn't try to assist the dog into a sit or down. I wouldn't wait, none of those things. I'm just trying to see, does this dog recognize this odor that I spent a couple days on?
Let me be the advocate for a lot of people. I know a lot of bases, especially when I was still in, they didn't have the boxes. So I would say just use something that to your advantage in a warehouse or a barracks room that, like you said, a cracked drawer or something that's just nose level where the dog can have availability to the odor, and then, pay
Sure.
or whatever you have.
I just like going to the boxes with the odors that the dog hasn't been trained on, just because I know that they use them. There's plenty of other objects you can do, but I don't want to change too many variables up. Aside from that point too, I want to see, prior to that, I'm going to be working with the odors that the dog does know. Because if that's not clear, I'm going to have to go through that same entire process again. But it's going to be the same thing with comfortability of an area. I actually like to take the dog out on a little bit of a longer line. Let's just say a 15-foot or a 20-foot, and just kind of take it for a walk and already have some odor placed out there. Not say anything and just see if the dog does a change of behavior. Just completely free. I just want to see what the dog does. And that's after I've already spent some time in that area, like letting the dog take a break. You just taking the dog for a walk, generally speaking. Just very natural on everything. I don't want anything to be stringent, just kind of free shaping it in a way. And then, yeah, when I see the dog, okay, the dog searches really well. It's not really affected by its environment. It's giving a full indication. None of the placements are very difficult. Maybe I've worked up a tiny bit of search time. I'm trying to see too, is the dog relying on other dogs' odors to get to target odor? So I'll switch up the order that the dog runs in. If you have multiple dogs there, I like to see the dog run first for a long period of time when they first come to the kennel. Same thing with human odor too. I am not trying to trick the dog, but I'm also not trying to insert human odor where it's going to help him find target odor.
So you're really big on not, I guess, using your hands to plant odor, or you use gloves a lot, or you try your best to kind of just do both?
No, I like to use gloves every single time.
Gotcha.
In the very beginning, I want to make sure that this love story we got is true. It's not contingent upon any other odor.
Gotcha.
Nothing else is making this dog find odor, because I don't want to trick myself. I fall in love before, where I was like, this dog's money. Like he's going through all these things, but he was he was super reliant on other factors to help him find target odor. And then 3 or 4 months in, I'm like, oh man, this was a trick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, I want to make sure that's not the case.
Gotcha.
Later on, we can start to do some of those things as detractors, but if the love was real in the very beginning, it ain't gonna matter.
All right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I don't know if you've seen this a lot. I've seen it a couple times where dogs false or non-productive responses. Can you like debunk a myth of like, the dog only falses if you allow it, or what should be a good process to work a dog out of a falsing issue?
So for me, I always say, I think before I act on it, I try to think, why is this dog false indicating? Because it's an unnatural movement, right?
Yeah. Something that we probably taught them.
Undoubtedly, we taught them it. So if I haven't been very diligent or self-aware in my training methodologies and how I've been implementing it, then I may have trained a false response myself. I didn't think I did. Maybe I paid the dog when he was near the odor and he threw what I thought was a change of behavior. It was a change of behavior, but it may not have been as a result of target odor. And then I assisted him and then I paid him. Or I've had my aids so close together that it's a time-based process there where he just goes to respond because there's been a certain interval in between each odor.
Time and distance.
Yeah, time and distance, or there's so many different factors that can cause a false response. I want to see if I can catch something consistent in the training that's caused this dog to false respond.
So do you promote it? Like say, like, hey, I'm the new handler. I just picked up this dog from another handler. Maybe his way of fixing his false response of just kind of like never showing it. Do you actually promote it? Like say if you say good too long or present longer than usual or stay in the area, do you actually show that dog that picture to fix it, or do you not let him experience it at all?
So if it's a change from a different handler, and for instance, let's just say I haven't witnessed them running and I see this dog start false responding, I'll try to expose what I think is the culprit of that false indication. And then I'll try my best to extinct it. Okay. For instance, if the handler, every time they stop, the dog false responds, then I'm going to attack that exact problem.
Now,
which I can go about that a couple different ways.
But
I'll expose it. On the flip side, if it's been caused by an environmental issue such as human odor, I'll completely remove. I'll try my best to completely sanitize, I guess, an area so he doesn't have that help anymore, and just have target odor there. And it may look like trash because he's had so much help with the human odor. Once I get that solid down, then I'll go and implement small bits of distracting odor way away from target odor in hopes that he doesn't need that anymore. And I won't influence him with body positioning to try to move away from it. If he goes towards the area that has human odor and he throws a little bit of change of behavior, I don't do anything different than I normally would in my searching pattern. And if he leaves, I personally don't say good. I don't want anything odd or weird to happen around it. I'm not going to say good because maybe he associates it with the area. I just keep searching like normal.
You don't award a fish for swimming.
No, I'm not. I used to do that, and then it didn't help anything, and it had the potential to make it worse. So I just stopped doing it altogether. Extinction is extinction. There's no type of reinforcement anywhere around it. So now, if let's just say we've gone a month, I don't want to get too off the rails here, but let's just say we've gone a month with having no human odor there, and I've injected a small amount of it, and the dog throws a change of behavior and he goes to sit. Me personally, I like to, if this is valuable to the dog, I'll just give a verbal no. and then I'll try to keep searching, and I hope that he goes to the target odor and indicates, so he has that discrimination. No, this is incorrect and this is correct. Sometimes I repaint the picture in hopes that he learns it right there. Some dogs, it provides a lot of confusion, and then the frustration doesn't help them find the target odor. So in that beginning stages, I might just say no, keep searching. When he finds it, you may even have to pay on a change of behavior because he may think it's just the sitting that's wrong. But I try to get that marker at the perfect time, right when he makes a decision. And the decision would be the mechanical action of sitting, not when he's actually sitting, right when he goes to sit. So you gotta make it real clear.
Gotcha. So it's like a little dance. Like I will say, just train the dog what's in front of you. If a dog's kind of hard-headed in that fact, you could use that method of saying no, or the dog, false indication, and then you say no, restart your search over it, and basically wait till that dog not offer that behavior again. There's multiple ways to go about it. But just train the dog in front of you, see how intense the behavior is, and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I just gave an example, but I could totally change my actions where maybe I would just sit there and wait. And then he starts searching it, then I don't say anything, and so on and so forth. There's so many different things to do. Don't think that that's the only one, but I do want to give some specific examples, because if newer handlers are listening to podcast stuff all the time and everything is very broad concept and generalized, they never actually get any good fucking information to use right now.
No.
They just keep listening to the same thing over and over again, just like this. They're not learning anything from me talking like this. So we got to give some examples.
Yeah. So what about, I've seen it differently. Dogs that aggress on odor. There are some dogs in the field that do it. What would you do to basically eliminate that behavior?
Honestly, that's the best way, is all the way back to the drawing board to completely reshape the indication.
So you're never
something that's all the way back.
Gotcha.
All the way back. That's the best way, especially if that's happening in the very beginning. Something's not clear. The dog's frustrated. He's got it's reinforcing to him to move something, and he's done it a couple times, and he thinks that's part of the process. I have to be very careful when I go back and reshape the behavior too, because whether I'm using a verbal mark or I'm tossing the toy, I have to be precise, even more precise if I'm using a marker, right? Because that's what we use them for, the precision of it. But I really just want to spend my time reshaping it in the very beginning. It's going to save you so much heartache to let's just completely retrain this behavior. And you might still see it surface over a period of time. There's multiple different reasons why dogs do that, but it's definitely not completely clear on what they need to do when they get there. And the behavior itself may have been reinforcing to the dog, even if it's been corrected. Mm-hmm. So reshape it. Just go ahead and reshape it. If it just services it every once in a while, let's just say the dog had no problems with it, and now you went straight to buried odor, and the buried odor, the dog was able to get all the way to it, then I would say, I don't think you probably need to reshape it all the way. Just the way you did buried odor was a bit too much. You skipped a couple steps there, and it bled its way into your normal detection. So I wouldn't say you have to go all the way back to the drawing board there. And I only say that because it services itself there a lot of the times. People trying to get to buried odor and just never having been taught how to introduce buried odor. So, because it's not introduced at Lackland, as far as I know.
I saw a dog toss that fucking A.
I've had them here too, man. I get it. All right. Well, sometimes you only have enough time in the day to train some of the newer handlers. You can't be there every moment if you're the lead trainer or senior handler helping out, or even the kennel master or something. But the most efficient way, if a behavior is like that it's happening more often than not, is just to completely reshape it.
So then that goes to my next question. Obviously, there's a difference between, a new dog or new handler or a maintenance phase for handlers. how many problems, like detection problems, should that new handler do? Is there 3 problems a day? Short sessions, not that hard, and like compared to a maintenance person, like hey, this dog's pretty good on odor. One problem a day should be good, or do they do their smaller sessions like that to work on issues? I know when we were working out in Spain, like our handlers, we never really worked on things that the dog was good at. We always worked on things that the dog was bad at, and maybe we'll come back to it like in a week, see how the dogs are doing, and maybe something new will resurface. So we're always looking to work hard to figure out what is changing in a variable, so it doesn't go anymore.
A real good question. The first part of that question would be, you have to get the training minutes in that your service requires you to get, because if not, you get fired. So it's not much more than that. I'm not real aware of all the branch specifics when it comes to that. So I would say get done what doesn't get you fired. Second part of that question is, yes, you should continuously be working on things that the dog's not great at while maintaining the things that the dog is good at. Too much training, I have been there. Some dogs don't respond well to it. Some dogs you could train all the time, really long sessions, and they seem to learn from it. You have to, one thing is, don't change too many variables, and see if just the amount of time that you're training the dog is actually productive, or if you're getting what's called empty repetitions in, where you're getting reps in, but the dog's really not learning anything. Mm-hmm. It's really just because you've gone batshit crazy on trying to make your dog as advanced as you can in such a quick fashion that you're kind of blind to what you're doing at the time. So I won't say there's a certain amount of times or a certain amount of time or how often, but keep the sessions short enough to where the dog can maybe receive 3 sessions on it in a day, and he's learning really well. And if you could do that every single day, man, you're really going to be getting your reps in. I mean, it's not much different than like working out. If you hit every single muscle group twice a week in a whole year time span, I've worked those things twice as much as you have. So, but that may be overstressing. So you're just going to have to be very aware. I think the awareness is a big factor. You can get in the dumps real quick with a dog, and 3 weeks in, the dog's completely fucked up. And someone comes out that's more senior or more experienced rather, and says, what the fuck's going on? Like, why is the dog doing this now?
So I know, I never let people train for the test. I just tell people to train over for the test. So are you promoting more a lower amount of odor for threshold, or do you do a large amount? I know it depends on, your behavior. Some people can, maintain that large amount and never experience low amount. But I've seen dogs just kind of like hoping to get smacked with odor compared to training with a lower amount of odor, and varying up your consistency of odors or, threshold odor to see where he's at.
Well, one, I don't know if that makes a difference as much as we think it does, the amount of odor that's there. Mm-hmm. I think what is encasing that odor is a bigger thing to look at. But for instance, I think if you had a stick of C4 outdoor in an open crate when it's kind of windy versus 5 sticks of C4, I don't know how much easier that would be for the dog. Like, the odor is not being trapped in a certain area per se. So I would say when you're starting out, yes, start at the lowest amount of odor that you can teach the dog something. And then later on, large amounts of odor, it would be another variable you change to see if the dog still discriminates there, or if he does do something odd. I used to think that I hear stories about dogs pissing themselves and all these crazy behaviors that would come out of a dog hitting up, like, I'm talking about a large amount of odor. Let's just say like 1,200 feet of dead cord or something like that. But
dogs just soft.
Yeah, I mean, in the earlier stages, start at I would say, just talking about thresholds, start at the most difficult problems that the dog can still be consistent and efficient with his learning process. Because if it's too easy all the time, your criteria is too low, then yeah, he's just going to be hoping he can just run around and guess and get smacked by it all the time. So does that answer your question or not really?
I answered my question. I just, there's a lot of people who will train with a large amount. They may knock out, 4 bags of AN or PC or whatever it may be, or a shit ton of, C4, like, whatever. It just depends what you're looking for. But I didn't know if you felt there was some type of difference of training like that. Like, hey, don't train super high amount, or, always train a low amount. I get more better sniffing behavior training low amount of odor compared to high amount of odor. So I didn't know what you thought was the difference. I just want to hear you.
Yeah, I think the placement of things closer together in an area helps that process too. 100%, where the dog learns to, in one given space, to have a more close searching pattern, sniffing behavior on it. And then if the odor is more difficult for the dog to find too, yeah, he can't just as easily run open mouth to it. But what might also happen in those circumstances is that you change the criteria too much and the dog passes the area. Maybe you continue to search for a little bit and then you hone in. The dog hasn't found anything for a long period of time. So maybe some of that frustration comes into play and you bring the dog back into the area that he passed the first time. And now he cues up on you a little bit and you find it. So just be careful. You could get yourself into a rabbit hole pretty quick if you're changing your criteria very abruptly. But I think there's a lot of tricks we're not thinking of. I think too, where, for instance, if we're using chlorates, how saturated is that bag with human odor? Is it? There's so many factors. I think
I've seen chlorates being, hasn't been changed in a while, or there's very stink or whatever, or just now changing it. There's bases that on top of it, changing it every single time. I don't know, everybody's changing out or whatever, but I've seen some old chlorates and I see some new chlorates, and it's just like training a new odor. Because I'm not looking for this.
Yeah, just human. You just gotta really break down the process. I just try to wrap my head around it too. Like, what's actually helping your dog? Is it the 250 bag? It's the same size bag as a 500 bag, 500 grams, but both bags are super saturated with human odor. Is it really the amount of chlorates in the bag that is affecting the dog? Mm-hmm. Or is it just the area that you're putting those two different ones? You got to cut down all these variables to see, is it the actually amount of odor, that the target odor that's in the bag? Have you ever taken that out and very carefully put it in a glass jar? Or, like we've used contact cases before, then we've had blank contact cases out there too, to make sure the dog's not queuing up on plastic or something visual, just to try to see, is this dog really in love or is he not?
I would say do what y'all rate can afford. So don't be doing what's out there. But for sure, that's a good idea to like put it outside of something that's in the chlorate bag. But for the chlorate, so a lot of people will do that and they will test it by putting their human scent on the wall. Do you feel like promoting distractions in your operational search is good? Or do you believe that if they never see it and you train odor to like the highest standard, they should not care about what distractors are in your problem, whether there's,
No, I'm always doing distractions, dude. Pay attention. So I figure out what sense am I trying to distract the dog with? Meaning, is it a visual sense? So am I trying to have other visual things that are trying to detract the dog from searching? Because remember, we're just proofing a search at this point. Is it another scent, human odor, whatever? If I want to try to get toys and try to extinct that process. That can be difficult though, depending upon how the dog was trained. Is it sound? Do sounds make my dog deviate from searching? I don't try to do them all at once, but I pay more attention to what the actual sense is. But I think you should. I 100% think you should, because you're gonna run into those in an operational environment. Try to paint the picture in training all the time. There's so much empty space where people were just sitting around talking and trying to watch the magic happen, where you could be doing something else. It's just either a lack of knowledge or laziness, one of the two, or maybe both. But I think you should make sure the baseline foundation there is pretty sound before you start messing stuff up too. Because I've also started distractions where the foundation was pretty good, and the distractions, the dog knew at some point he wasn't supposed to pay attention to the distraction, but it built some frustration in the dog along the way, and that kind of affected his indication, where he was like almost a little nervous when he was there. I guess more than frustration.
Unsure, or like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm right, or like
just like I'm always getting fucked with when I'm searching, and I've learned that to not pay attention to you, but I can't stop thinking about you, and it still distracts him in a sense. He looks like he's not distracted, but I can sense it and just look at his body language, and then maybe I start to develop an aggressive response out of that. Maybe he's just like, just kind of freaking out, but still searching, and he's searching. Like, you got to pay attention to those things.
Okay. So one of my last questions to kind of wrap things up. How do you feel about, and obviously it's always based opinion and see what you can get away with your trainer, rewarding at source and rewarding away from source with the yes marker. There's a lot of differences that you're creating a dog that comes away from source or not stable at source. I definitely think there is a balance, but let's see what you think about it.
Man, that's a really long topic. On that, generally speaking, I think you should be able to do both with a dog. I think there's opportunities to use both. Obviously, the timing with the word is going to be much better, and it helps with distance stuff and getting very specific behaviors. But it's very easy to not mess up just paying a dog at source. I think you should have both, though. That's without having a 2-hour conversation about it. I think you should be able to use both at your disposal and just watch for anticipation.
Gotcha. All right. So, we're going to keep this short and sweet, but is there anything else you want to add, or you want to put on to a conversation? I think
shout out to all my handlers out there on the grind, man. Just spraying dog shit. Just living the hard life, clipping nails, popping anal glands, everything it takes, man. Not promoting for 10 years. Just for the love. No, shout out to all my United States military working dog handlers. If you guys want to hear us keep talking about stuff, we've been on a couple podcasts. Whatever it is, we're just trying to help. I don't know everything, but I'm here to learn. I'm here to give what I've learned, and love y'all.
Yeah. So if y'all do have any other questions, or we're going to post it on the page, the Spectrum page that we created for the handlers as well. So if you have anything to add, that you want to see more, another topic, whatever it be, we'll try to get Chris on, twice a month or once a month, whatever allows it, or he can call on his little famous friends he got.
Like you.
But yeah, so hopefully y'all like it. Once we post it, just drop some comments. We'll help as best as possible.
Love you, Dontay.
All right, don't be gay. All right.